Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of My Ed Tech Live. I'm so excited to be here with you all today on this wonderful Saturday. Hopefully, you guys are already getting your morning started, have that coffee, have that breakfast, or whatever it is that you may be doing, wherever it is you're joining us from around the world. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope, like I said, you're having a wonderful, wonderful day. And I know I'm having a great day this morning because I have just an amazing guest, an amazing person, and now just an amazing friend. I mean, it was just one conversation and it was just like everything clicked. We just became really great friends. And now I'm just so happy to have Matthew Woods on the show today. Matt, how are you doing? Let us know, how are things right now?
Morning, Fonz. Doing good, man. I apologize if I sound a little congested. Like I told you, my little man, he was sick earlier in the week, and then he suddenly got me and my wife sick. So I'm starting to obviously bounce back, but she's still doing a little rough. So like I said, man, I'm glad to be on here. I've been excited about getting to connect with you again and chat. So yeah, man, appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Matt. I appreciate you. And just for our audience members, those of you that are watching us right now, please let us know a little bit more in context, your context in education, what you do. And if you don't mind, also adding maybe a little something interesting about yourself that people may not know about.
All right, cool. So like I said, thanks again for having me. My name's Matthew Woods. I'm an educator. That's my passion. That's what I do. My career has spanned from being a high school history teacher. So shout out everybody who's teaching history and social studies, best subject ever. Like I said, started there, history teacher. Then I transitioned into administration. So I've been a middle school assistant principal, been a high school assistant principal, was a middle school principal, and now I'm actually the director of student support services for the school district that I work in. In addition to that, man, I've taught at the collegiate level several times. I'm currently adjunct professor with Elizabethtown College. I've supervised student teachers. I've got a podcast that Leading Out the Woods. Also got a children's book series that I'm really excited about. We finalized the deal earlier this week with a Code Breaker. Shout out Code Breaker. Shout out Brian. So I'm excited about that. And yeah, man, like you can see, like my passions and everything really stem around education and just doing good work.
Excellent, man. And I think that's why we became such great friends. Just to give you a little bit of background on how I got to know Matt is, well, obviously through his podcast, because a friend of mine, AJ Bianco, who has a Reflect Ed podcast. So shout out to AJ
Shout
Bianco.
out AJ.
Amazing administrator, also doing some amazing work. And so I got to hear the show that when you were with him and talking about leadership, and I was like, who is this guy? Like, I was like, wow, I was just like really taken by that podcast. And then of course I had an assignment that I needed to do for a research proposal for one of my courses. And then I was like, hey, I just put it out there into the Twitter space and LinkedIn and everything. All of a sudden it's like, hey man, if you want to, meet or you want to talk. And I was like, what? Like, that is so cool. And we had a great conversation and just really brought new insight, seeing things from a different perspective. And really, I was blown away by just the knowledge that you have. Because, again, like I mentioned to you, I was like not coming from the education background, but coming in from, corporate and business. But just to hear you talk, I was like, wow. So, man, I'm just so excited for you to be here. And then that way we can get that our audience members can get to know you a little bit more. We'll talk about your podcast. We'll talk about your book series and all those great projects that you've got coming up. But I just want to get to know, and I want our audience members to get to know Matt Woods a little bit more. Who is Matt Woods, where he came from, and what inspired Matt Woods to become an educator and just be passionate about education?
Gotcha. So, man, that's a loaded question. That's a good one.
Yeah.
so just about me, and I think I kind of forgot because you did say tell one random thing about you that people don't know. I think you can see my coffee cup, man. It's got Spider-Man on there. I'm a huge comic nerd, so that's one random thing about me, especially folks that know me. But what inspired me to become an educator? It's having folks that saw potential in me, seeing things in me that I didn't see in myself. but it would really, it's two people really inspire me. The first one is my mom. She's an educator. She was a teacher, and she's actually a administrator as well. And I remember growing up, I was like, I don't want to be an educator. I don't want to be a teacher. Definitely don't want to be a principal, because I would see the the backside of stuff. You know, a lot of folks, when they go into a profession, you only see what's projected, right, or presented in front of you. But like I would tell people, you know, I saw mom staying up late doing lesson plans. I saw her staying up grading papers. I would see her calling parents. I would see her, you know, when she transitioned to administration, calling other teachers and doing different things. And, you know, and I working late at the football games. And I was just like, I don't want that. You know, I was like, that's just not me. And so I think it was maybe my junior year of high school. It had to have been, my sophomore, junior year of high school. We were in Walmart one day, and this woman came up, and she kind of did a double take looking at me and my mom, and she just shouted out, she's like, "Oh my God, Mrs. Woods." Now, for folks that know my mom, like back in the day, she was Miss Woods, but then, you know, my parents split. She changed her name back to Powell. So when someone says Mrs. Woods, you taking it, you know, way, way, way back, right? So mom turned around, and I hope she doesn't get mad I'm telling the secret. My mom got a thing is, if she don't remember your name, she'll be like, "Hey, bud," or "Hey, honey." So when she would hit the woman with the "Hey, honey," I was like, all right, mom forgot this poor woman's name. But from there, just the look in the lady's eyes, like talking to my mom, I was like, you don't realize how you changed my life. You were like the best teacher I ever had. You saw something in me, da da da. And it was surreal, because obviously that's how I think about my mom, because I have a great relationship with her. But seeing someone else say that about my mom, and just the look, I never forget the look this lady had. And then of course she wanted to introduce her child to mom, and, you know, mom said, "Oh my God, thank you, blah, blah, blah." And then I remember, you know, then mom was like, "Hey, what cereal do you want?" Da da da. You know, she just kind of went back to her. But I remember I just kind of sat there, and that's what really sparked my curiosity to go into education, because in my head, I was like, you know, if I can make one impact like my mom had on that lady, that would mean everything to me. So then fast track a little bit into college. One of the best teachers I ever had, Dr. Marianne Norman. Shout out Dr. Norman if you're listening to this. She was the head of the education department at Ferrum College. And she always, you know, we talk about pouring into somebody, investing into somebody. She always saw something in me. And even when I wanted to give up on myself or say, "Hey, I don't think education is really my thing," she would always, like, it was always a quick comeback. Like, "What are you thinking? That's stupid. Why would you say that, Matt? Honey, you're going to be all right. No, you got a lot to give." And like I said, those are the two people that really inspired me and really kind of set me on the course I'm on today.
Man, that is amazing. You know, and that's such a wonderful story, because I think like that, what your mom went through, what you witness your mom go through when somebody comes up to you. I mean, I've always said, and again, not going through college of education, but I kind of knew that once I went into education, I said, you know, I'm not going to see the fruits of my labor to many, many years, you know, down the road, because I'm just right now just planting that seed. And, you know, I've had that situation where I've had students that I'll run into, and they're like, "Hey, Mr. Mendoza," and everything. And when I get to see them and see how well they're doing, and then they tell me their stories, their successes, and all of those things, man, that just makes you feel great. And you feel like, wow, you've made a difference. You know, one person at a time. You had, you know, just that seed right there. You saw that fruit, and that's really inspiring, man. And I think also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, on top of that too, like you said, you know, unfortunately, a lot of times, all of us, right, we're used to instant gratification, right? Like we want it to happen. You know, if you think about, if you have a job, you get paid either most of the time every 2 weeks or every month. That's instant gratification or instant response to the work that you just did. And education is very different, because like you said, we're investing in young people, and you're setting them on the course, right, for the route, but you don't really see the end game, right? You know that, hey, if you kind of follow this route, if you just take some of these nuggets I'm giving you, you're able to make your own decisions but you're going to have a higher probability of making some positive ones compared to some negative ones. And like you said, it's one of those things that I think for a lot of folks who get into education, sometimes that message isn't very clear because once again, we're used to something happen instantaneously. Like, if I do this, I should see the effect of it immediately. And, our profession really isn't set up that way.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And to add to that, I wanted to, what your professor said, Dr. Norman, talking about pouring into people and building relationships. I think to me, that's one of the things that it has or was or has always been one of the most important things, that before I am going to teach somebody something, before I'm going to share something, is to really build that rapport. And you have those students that you're pouring yourself into, and that makes a world of a difference within your classroom. You're investing that time, that you build up their confidence, you build up that, psychological safety within there, that trust, that bond, and that can alleviate a lot of issues, throughout the year as far as behavioral issues or expectations, things of that sort. But most importantly, it's just that relationship aspect. And I love that. That's something that's very important that I feel sometimes can get a little lost, because we have to, teach the curriculum. We have to make sure we cover this. We have to make sure we cover that we lose sight that we are in the people business. We really are. And I think that's one of the things that has really helped me bringing that in for my marketing background is relationships, customer service, and all that. So that's really sound advice from Dr. Norman right there, Matt.
Yeah. And I mean, if you think about it, and like you said, because, like you said, your background coming into education is different than a traditional educator, right? But you understand the value of customer service and listening to the consumer, right? And a lot of times in education, we don't really do a good job of that, right? And what I mean by that is, if we're in the business of teaching kids, that should be one of the number one or the number one voice that we listen to. Like, what exactly are they perceiving of us? Like, we know the curriculum, we know what they need to get, but we really need to tap into their authentic voices to kind of hear, like, what are they going through? Like, what are their perceptions? Why is this not sticking the way we would expect it to, right? Because at the end of the day, it's cool that we know what we're talking about, but it's really more important that the kid shows mastery of the content, that they're picking up on these different cues that we're trying to get. And like you said, it stems from relationships, because one thing that I do with a lot of different folks that I work with, I always ask them, hey, look, when you think about your favorite educator, right? Your favorite teacher, whoever you had in school, like, just think about them. Who were they? And then why? And the why is always the same thing. How they made you feel, building relationships, what they did. It wasn't the content, right? Because I tell people, you had a lot of math teachers, you had a lot of history teachers, science teachers, etc. It was the way they made you feel and that connection that you had. And then from there, you bought into whatever they were talking about, right? I had a teacher that I had the pleasure of working with, like, back in the day when I was like a newbie in administration, right? So this lady had like ample amount of years on me. So I used to just be a sponge, like walking her classroom, soaking stuff up. And what used to always trip me out was I'd have these other teachers doing all this innovative stuff, differentiating, all that stuff. And this other teacher was really kind of old school, right? So if you just walked in and you didn't know what was going on, you would automatically ding that teacher and say, hey, like, yo, you need to be using your smart board. Hey, why are we seeing these manipulatives being used? All this different stuff. But the thing that I remember that it really grounded me and showed me was when I started paying attention to how much she just listened to her students and how much she invested that first 2 weeks of school. A lot of times we talk about the first day, first couple of days, maybe the first week. The first 2 weeks, she was all about learning names, building relationships, what they like, what they didn't like, what's going on in your neighborhood, like, what can I do to help you, just caring about the person. And then the kids were hooked, and then everything else kind of set its course. So I'd go in there and be like, man, like, but when you saw the foundation of what she did, so to me, I used to always say that right there is an instructional strategy. That's a foundation of instruction. Like building that relationship will save you on the back end. And it'll allow kids to run through that wall when they get frustrated. And they might say, man, this is really dull today. Like, do we really got to do this? But you know what? I know that I got that connection with that teacher. I know they care. I know they're doing what's best for me. So, you know what? I'm gonna maintain and go through that wall with them because I trust them, because we have that relationship.
Oh yeah, I love that, dude. Everything you said there was just amazing. You know, it just kind of reminds me back when I was in the classroom too, as well. Just those experiences. You're right. You know, those first 2 weeks was really just getting to know the students and making them feel welcome, and it does, like you said, save you a lot of time and energy later on in the long run. So now let's talk a little bit. Now, you know, you're going to college. You're going through the College of Education. You come out. You know, tell me a little bit about your first teaching job, and if you can also tell me what is one thing that you wish you knew before you started, you know, teaching and started your teaching career. Yeah.
Gotcha. So when I came out, um, my first teaching job, and I think people could say, you know, I like to say I still look young for my age, but I am in my 30s now. So I say that all joking aside to kind of show the spectrum. So you would think like, okay, you know, I relatively started my career 10 plus years ago, right? And so it's not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, right? So when I finished up, I remember there were like school systems, to remain nameless, you know, I'm not gonna call anybody out, that wouldn't hire me because at the time, like I actually have, you can't see it on here, but I have like visible tattoos. I think I still was wearing earrings back in the day. And I remember one HR director saying to me, you know what you're talking about and you're really good. Our policies just aren't set up where I can hire you. And I remember kind of thinking to myself, like, man, really? Like, and I remember it stuck with me, and I appreciated her honesty. I want you to know that. But it stuck with me because when we talk about relationships, I said, okay, so we're already framing certain people based on the way they look and based on what they're bringing in. So we're not putting people in front of kids that might reflect some of our kids, right? And then we're also implicitly saying that isn't the image that we want to convey. So like that isn't what we want to have, right? So you're already dismissing groups of kids, right? And stakeholders. If you know that's really, I have the words to say it now, but back then, my little 21-year-old mind, I was remember kind of thinking like, I can't believe that happened. So I say that to say I got a position in the district. It's actually the district that I'm in now as a director. And I tell you, man, I've worked in other districts and they've all been amazing. And I've worked with other people. But as a collective, knowing what I know now, you know, started my career and then coming full circle back to where I'm at now, I can honestly say everybody I work with puts students first. Like I've never had a conversation with anybody where I questioned their decision on this, right? And I mean, I could say that because I've had the opportunity to be in a lot of different places, work with a lot of different people. So I'm very fortunate that like the leadership folks that I work with now, like the superintendent I work with now is amazing, always putting students first, always builds people up. And it's funny because I even tell her the very first time we had a conversation, she built a relationship with me. She looked out for me. You know, I was a young teacher and I was like, hey, you know, I think we were in one of those new teacher workshops, right? And I think I said something like, hey, so I think I should put like my cell phone number on here on the syllabus. So if kids have questions, they could call me, right? Now, I think all of us know like that's not a smart idea, right? But you know, I'm going in with the right intentions, right? And I remember the way she kind of said no without just like saying that was a stupid idea. From there, we just built that relationship. And I always crack on her and bring that up because it started there and how things have come full circle. Like when you invest in people, right? Even not just as a student, but then when you talk about staff, right? So now taking it full circle to like the question at hand, like what I know now that I wish I knew then. I wish I would prioritize relationships even more. Like I did, like I knew relationships were important, but now any position, any role, any meeting that I have, anytime I'm connected with people, in the front of my mind, it's like, okay, do I have a relationship with them? Do I have a sour relationship with? Has something happened that might turn this relationship? Because sometimes we don't talk about that, right? You know, we say like, hey, we want to build relationships, but not all relationships are positive. Sometimes you have a bad relationship with somebody or something happens that can put it in a negative light. So I always try to operate from that mindset because, I mean, it helps. I can honestly say on here, I was in a situation before where I didn't build relationships, right? I can honestly say that now. Like it was a time when I was still a building administrator in a role, and I went in, like I think meeting with the teachers, talking about data, like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And I remember it was just like negative. They hated it. They were all mad. And I remember talking to the principal and I was like, hey, I don't understand. Like, you know, the data's showing this and this is what we need to do, blah, blah, blah. And I remember she told me, and at the time I didn't absorb it, you know, now hindsight 2020. And she said, you know, Matt, you just need to slow down and build that relationship first. Like you just need to get to know them. And knowing what I know now and reflecting on that, she was right on the money. And it's that way if you're in administration, it's that way if you're still in the classroom. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It all starts with building those relationships.
Nice. I want to touch back on something that you said, you know, having your leaders build you up, like they saw that potential in you as well. You know, how important was that for you, that as you're coming up, you know, from a teacher and then all of a sudden, you know, pursuing, you know, a higher position and all of that, you know, did you have that support, those mentors that were there to build you up? And if so, what's the big difference that it made for you, the impact that it made on you?
Gotcha. I will say I have them, or I had them, and I still have them. Okay, so I had those mentors that was coming through, and I still have them. And one thing I think we all kid ourselves on is you don't know what you don't know. Like you make assumptions, right? We all make assumptions. Like, hey, when I become a teacher, I ain't gonna be like that bad relationship I had with that teacher. You know, I'm gonna be that cool teacher. I'm gonna be the teacher that all the kids love. You know, I hear, especially newbie teacher, I hear them say that all the time. And same thing even with, you know, administrators. And one thing for me that has always helped me is just listening to their experiences and their stories. Doesn't mean I'll still make the same decisions, but you gotta have, I think at the end of the day, you gotta have respect for somebody who's done it, who's walked in those shoes. You know, like you might disagree on some of their decisions, but you can never take experience from folks, right? And I think sometimes we kid ourselves because experience, I think that term, especially in education, gets used too loosely, right? You know, and what I mean by that, and like for the listeners out there, like you'll often hear people say, like, I got 15, 20 years of experience, right? And then you say, okay, break that experience down. Okay, you've only taught one grade, you've been in one building, you haven't really done any type of leadership positions. And I'm just saying hypothetically, if you're going into a leadership position, right? So yes, you have experience, but when we examine that definition of experience, you don't have that differentiated experience we're talking about. So especially when you talk about going into leadership roles, right? And then going into, you know, different buildings, different levels, elementary, middle, high, district level, when you talk about different communities, knowing how your stakeholders are and stuff. If you don't have certain experiences, you should automatically be linking up with people and saying, hey, Fonz, how did you navigate this? How did you do this? Tell me your story about what you did. And then you just need to file that in the back of your brain and think about, okay, what steps did they take? And what are things that maybe I could do differently to either be as successful as that person or take it up a notch? I think, unfortunately, a lot of times folks don't do that. And it really comes back to to haunt them. But I've been very fortunate that I've had great mentors who, like I said, I can pick the phone up, I'll call them, run stuff by them. Even when I think I might know the best decision, I'll still call them like, hey, I just want to, can I ask you this? Like off record, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? Like, have you seen this or da-da-da? And it never fails. They'll always say something to me where it's kind of like, I didn't think about that. Let me consider that as I'm trying to do what I'm trying to do.
Oh man, that is awesome. That's really important. And likewise, and kind of like what you said there kind of resonated. Like the first time I called you and we were talking about, the topic about the research, and then hearing your experience, I left that and I was like, oh man, I kind of maybe been looking at things a little bit different because of that experience and things of that sort. So it's always great to just have people, and I think it's important too to go straight to the source. If you need information, if you need help, go straight to the source, ask and learn. And I think that's something that oftentimes possibly educators, feel a little, just reluctant by, because it's like, well, how am I going to go ask, the assistant superintendent, or, what if they don't have time? What if they do this? What if they, it doesn't hurt to ask, and sometimes you'd be surprised at the answers that you'll get that'll just kind of like, boom, just blow you away because of the experience that they have. So that's great, man. That's awesome. But I want to go ahead and kind of just change gears a bit, because I know that we had some great news, at least, seen from your Twitter feed, your posts and everything. And for many of our audience members that are viewing right now or listening, they may not be aware that our guest today, Matthew Woods, is an author. And he does have a series he does have a series already. Now it's coming out through, well, I won't spoil the surprise, but that's why the title of the show is called I Wanna Be. So Matt, talk to us a little bit about this project, what happened, share the news with us.
Gotcha. So like I said, man, I'm excited about it. The project really started probably about a year or so ago. My son, he's mixed. He's biracial. My wife is white. And what happens, I think, a lot of times when you become a parent, you really start seeing things really differently, right? And I know we always talk about visual representation, diversity, what that means. But one thing that I noticed, and I kind of knew this beforehand, right, being an educator, but now really seeing, is like I really don't see things that really reflect him. I don't see things that he could kind of pick up and say like, hey, that's me. Like, and I think sometimes we kid ourselves when we don't think and be strategic, right, about what we put in front of our children, right? Because marketing, as like, your background, social media, those things take on a life of its own, and it really does influence people. So I never forget, my wife had surprised me with this book, I think for my birthday, where it was one of those where it's like they kind of make you into the book with your child and you're kind of reading it. It was nice. And I was reading through it and I was like, man, I could have done something better than this. And she was like, oh, really? Well, why don't you go write a book? So I was like, okay, I will. And literally, man, that's how I started. So I just started scripting it out. And one of the other things I was passionate about is, and as being an educator as well, you'll have folks who want the best for their kids, and they'll say like, I want my kid to be this, I want my kid to be that. But then a lot of times people don't know that hidden curriculum or those other little steps you have to take to get to what you're trying to do. Like, I hear people tell me all the time, like, I want to be a lawyer. Okay, do you know about the bar exam? Do you know about the license test you got to take? Do you know after you get your bachelor's degree, you got to go get your Juris Doctorate? Well, what is a Juris Doctor? I mean, it's just certain things in terminology that you have to expose parents to and kids to. And that doesn't mean you should expect every child to say like, I'm going to be this, or I'm going to be this, and I know every step. No, but if they hear that vocabulary, they get exposed to, or they hear someone say, yeah, you need to do an internship. Okay, what is an internship? Right there, that's taking you down another rabbit hole. And then that internship is going to lead to networking opportunities, which will come full circle once you finish your degree or whatever you get specialized into. So those are the two big premises behind the series for each one. And yeah, man, we've already scripted out 5 of them. I'm actually working on the next 2 scripts as well. And the other cool thing about it is, I think folks really like, is that my son is the star character of it. So the first 4 books in the series, I've actually kind of written when he was 1. So the little head that you see on there, and you'll see him like wearing a suit and everything, but still got his baby face. That was what he looked like when he was 1. Starting with book 5 and then several others, you're actually then going to see him now as he's 2 years old. So the series is really going to grow with them. So those are just kind of the covers up. Those are the covers up right there. They're just as placeholders. So if anybody's looking, it's not actually on Amazon on there quite yet. Like I said, I had an amazing conversation with Brian, who's the head of Codebreaker. Shout out, Brian, if you're listening. We were just looking at the drafts the other day, and I mean, man, it's really a blessing, because I had a friend of mine reach out to me when he saw that I had, signed with them for the deal, and said, man, we were talking about this a year ago, and you were telling me what you were envisioning. And he's like, dude, it's just surreal to kind of see now that full circle, you're really making it happen. So I'm excited about it. I appreciate all the love, all the teachers, the school systems that have reached out to me, that are excited about the book and what they can use it for with their kids to inspire them. I mean, it just means so much to me.
Awesome. Well, let's give a shout out to AJ Bianco, who's joining us right now on Facebook. And of course, Brian, who's been watching on Facebook as well, commenting. So big shout out to AJ, who says, 2 rock stars here. So proud of you both, man. AJ is an amazing gentleman. I mean, a friend. He is so supportive, and he is one of the guys, also much like you, that I look up to, and I'll, text him every once in a while, get ideas and so on. And of course, we know Brian. Brian is everywhere. Brian is everywhere at all times, and it's just amazing how he keeps track of everything that he's doing. But big shout out to Brian for, all the work that he's doing with Codebreaker EDU and, everything, all of his projects. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. So, I mean, it's so great to hear. And one thing that, again, like you said, your friends telling you like, hey, a year ago, like these are the things that you were talking about, and now just to see them come to fruition, I know that that's definitely very exciting. And especially with this project, it's going to grow kind of right along with your son, which is great, that as he continues. And I hope you just take this as far as you can. And, as he continues to grow, I think that is just a wonderful project, and, something that is going to serve our educator community, and actually all communities, in just a very powerful way. So I'm just really thankful for your project and the work that you're doing with that, man. And just how you just got inspired. You just said, you know what? I can do something a little bit better. And you're like, your wife was like, really? So, all right, challenge accepted. Let's go ahead and do that. That is great. All right, my friend. Well, let's go ahead and continue just talking about, just some overall questions based on education. But I wanted to ask you, like, currently right now, whether it's professionally or personally, actually, let's go with professionally first, because this will be the question that I'd like to ask. But currently, what is your edu kryptonite? What is it, maybe that one thing or those couple of things that maybe you hear and it just weakens you, and you're like, what would you say your edu kryptonite would be?
Man, my edu kryptonite, that's a good question. It really has to be when folks are dismissive about the whole child. When folks just assume that a kid should walk in and care about what you're talking about, like, and it always it burns me, man. It always sticks out like a sore thumb, because I'm like, what kid walks into a class and wants to care about algebra? Kid walks into a class, and I'm, like I said, I taught world history too. I love world history too. It's my thing. 1500 AD all the way present day. That was no kid is coming in saying, yo, Miss Woods, I'm excited to learn about the Renaissance today. Man, the Reformation and what they did to the Catholic Church. Hey, sign me up right now. So you've got to build that relationship. And then you've also got to tie it to something that's relevant in kids' lives to make them want to be hooked on it. because like we understand why it's important, right? And like I said, for my math folks out there, it was like, oh man, he had to start off with algebra. Look, your boy loves algebra. I'm not dissing you on that, but I'm saying we've got to start with something that we know that kids care about immediately. Usually something going on in their communities, something going on like relevant to them right now. I mean, I don't even care if you pull something from social media because all the kids are tweeting about it. But if that can be the hook for what you're talking about, then it's going to stick in their head, right? And unfortunately, we've all fall victim, because I remember sometimes I would too. I'd walk in and like, hey guys, look, winter break's coming up in a couple of days. Look, we got to knock out this unit. I'm going to put these bullet points up. I need you to copy this PowerPoint. And then hindsight, I'd end up having to review again. They didn't remember it. They were just going along to go along with me because they're like, all right, Mr. Woods needs us to do this real quick, because I had that relationship, right? So they were with me to a point, but then I really started to see that that's just not how it's going to stick. Because the most important thing isn't just delivering the instruction, but you got to get it to stick in their heads, right? One of the best teachers I had, Miss Heath, back in third grade, everything she did in third grade stuck. And I'm talking about third grade. How many of us can remember the lessons you did in third grade? I remember how she taught me cursive. I remember for Christmas break, we did the vocabulary game, shooting a little elf through the hoop. I mean, like I can name 10 or 12 different lessons like that off the get-go from third grade, but she always connected it to stuff and made it relevant. And I think to myself sometimes, because a lot of times we're very dismissive. Hey, kids at those younger ages, they're not going to remember some of this stuff. But then I always tell people, I remember all my stuff in third grade. Now, the rest of it gets kind of shaky. And then I think about, like when I had Dr. Norman, I remember all the stuff I did in my education courses because we had that kind of relationship. I remember Mr. Mark Hatcher, one of my history teachers at Franklin County High School, where I went to school at. I remember all the lessons he did with us, because when folks make it relevant and make it stick and have that relationship with you, you're planting the seeds where it's just going to carry with those kids moving forward.
Nice. Well, I like this. AJ chimed in with a great quote from Josh Tovar, who's also an amazing administrator. Says, kids don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. That's some pretty good, that's a wisdom nugget right there that you can definitely take. And it just comes back to relationships and creating that learning experience. And that's one thing that with you, Matt, what you were just talking about, how you remember that, it's because that teacher, she created that learning experience for you, that relationship, all of those connections that were relevant. And that's so important right now, a way to foster that collaborative environment. And like you said, very important, tying it in to what is relevant today, what is happening, and engaging them in that hook. And I think oftentimes as teachers, you get into your comfort zone and you teach your lesson. You already have your lessons from the year before, and you really kind of don't step out of your box or look at to the climate of the way things are and seeing how you can use some of that to bring into your classroom to engage your students and making it relevant to them. Like you said, sometimes teachers say, well, I have 15 years of teaching experience, but like you said, they've been in the same building teaching the same subject, and sometimes maybe even teaching the same lesson for 15 years. So, we really as educators always have to be creative, think in an innovative way, step outside our box a little. Well, as long as, like, one thing that I've learned from you is we need to stay within our sandbox, meeting our standards, but they're just telling us what standards we need to cover, but we can teach it and be creative in the way that we teach it. So that's something I know I learned from you, and that really changed my whole mindset on that as well.
I appreciate it. And if I can say, when we said the experience, I want to make sure I clarify that too, just in case of anybody. I'm not, when I said that earlier, not trying to take a knock at anybody if you've only been in like one place your whole career or majority of your career, et cetera. But what I mean is when folks make the broad term, I have all this experience, it's like, be very specific. What kind of experience do you have? Like I tell people, I have a very diverse range of experience, but I don't have experience at the elementary level. Like I don't have the classroom teaching experience at the elementary level. Like I've never ran elementary building. Like I make sure to tell people, like, yeah, I have this this leadership experience, but I don't have that specific one, and that's okay. So I know if it's something that's specifically that would affect elementary folks, elementary principals, I need to pick up the phone and call one of them. I need to reach out to some folks I know and say, let me run this by you. How would this sink in? Because I already know how the middle and high school folks can kind of think, right? And then vice versa. And I think just being very transparent with people and very honest, like you rarely come across someone who has served in like every kind of role, right? Position. I think like the superintendent I currently work for, she's actually served, I think, in like every like position pretty much before she taken the top job. So it's interesting because there's so much wealth of experience that sometimes I just sit back like a sponge, like, man, how many folks can say they've done all these different things? And I mean, like, that's a very powerful type of experience. When someone can say, like, yo, I've sat in that role and done this, and this is what I'm saying. Majority of us, that's just not the case. So you need to then know, okay, when do I need to put myself and surround myself with folks and bounce ideas off other people who are bringing in diverse experiences that can help inform the decisions that we're making.
Nice. Well, thank you for clarifying that, because that definitely will be maybe somebody listen and be like, oh, and then so I appreciate you clarifying that for all our audience members and people that are viewing. And so I wanted to talk to you also about your podcast, and you've got a great podcast. You've got great guests, great topics. So tell us a little bit about how you decided to start your podcast. What inspired you to get into podcasting?
Definitely. So the podcast actually started several years ago. We had I had different folks make comments to me and reach out. They're like, hey, Matt, you just got a diverse perspective on things, man. You should like write a blog. I had a buddy who was like, you should write a blog. I'm like, I don't really like writing blogs. It's just not my thing. And he said, you should do a podcast. I really don't want to do a podcast. At the time, I didn't really listen to podcasts. So then over time, what started to happen was I had these thoughts and these ideas about different things. I just wanted to reflect on them. And then I wanted to connect with different people to reflect on different ideas. And yeah, and that's really sparked, man. It was kind of several different sidebar conversations, and it turned into leading out the woods, because the running joke my buddy would always say is we would talk about something and he would always say, man, you're just leading me out the woods. And it just kind of stuck, it kind of runs like, it kind of catchy. So yeah, man. And that's how it started. And the podcast, I mean, that's amazing. Like, it's blown up to proportions I just couldn't even imagine. I mean, it went from like me trying to reach out, like, hey man, I'd love for you to be a guest, or now I have listeners just like, hey, we talked to so-and-so, they want to be on your show. You need to connect with this person. So it's been amazing. And yeah, we've had a lot of great, innovative educators from around the country on there. We have listeners all over the country that reach out, that drops emails to me, DMs, just thanking me, giving me ideas for the content. So shout out any of the listeners. On my podcast, we reach out and say, hey, Matt, here's a topic or item you should dive into or reflect on, and link up with people. And yeah, man, it's just been a great experience. I often say on there, and I hope folks don't think I'm joking around, because the podcast is just audio, but normally we record it video, right? Like on Zoom. Mm-hmm. But usually I'm sitting there with my pen out taking notes, and I'm listening to what folks are saying, and I'm taking notes myself, and then kind of thinking about how can I use that in my toolbox to make better decisions and be a better educator. So man, podcast has been amazing. Thank everybody for the support, and yeah, we're just going to keep it going.
Definitely. And I did pop in the link here in our comment section, so people, when they rewatch the video and everything like that, I'll pop in the link into the show notes, so you can go ahead and find Matt's podcast there, and just the amazing guests that he has, the amazing topics. And really, I mean, it's just diverse collection of topics that will really help you and really inspire you and really just give you some more knowledge. As I said, listening through some of these episodes, just the things that I pick up on, and really help me understand, a little bit more about the education setting, but into that that next level and really diving in deep. So really appreciate what it is that you're doing. So, it says Josh Tovar is joining us. Thank you, Josh, for joining us. Says, hey, didn't know about this. Oh, Josh, well, now you know. Make sure that you check out leadingoutthewoods.com so you can go ahead and check out Matt's podcast there. Thank you for joining us, Josh. Appreciate you, my friend, and the work that you're doing as well. All right. So just to kind of wind down as we're getting ready to really close up our show, just a couple of questions just to kind of lighten things up a little bit. But before we do that, just out of curiosity, Matt, because you've done so much and I don't know, I want to say you said 10 years, you've been able to accomplish so much in 10 years, in education. You can, you're young, and I know that this isn't the end of the road for you and you're going to continue going, but where do you see yourself in 5 years? Have you ever thought about that? Or maybe is this the first time you're thinking about that for right now?
Yeah, man. I've always said that the number one thing that's been at the front of my mind is just doing good work and helping students in any capacity. And if I get the skills or the capacity to help in a different role, then I would be open to it. I don't really say like, yeah, I'm gunning for this, gunning for that. And I just kind of just want to do good work. And to give you an example, if you can hear somebody cry in the background, my son actually just dropped off down here with me because my wife's
awesome.
got to run to hair appointment.
Hey, if he wants to say hi, you can get him on and say hi.
Yeah. But he sorry about that. But he is but yeah, that's kind of where it comes from. Just doing good work. I really, like I said, I don't want to feel like I'm not answering the question. I really don't just say like this is where I want to be in a couple of years. Because I used to have goals like that. And I think those are too static. I feel like just if you do good work, good things will happen. Kind of like with the book series. I just wanted to put things out and do something for my son that could help other kids, and look what it turned into. So
nice. Well, that's good. I mean, it's a great answer. It's great, perspective on things. And I think what you said, fairly simple. Just continue doing good work. Good things will happen when you continue to do that. So that's great. All right. And then a couple of more questions here. It says, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
If building relationships matter, just straight to the point, building relationships matter. I think that's the most important thing. And long as you continue to do that, everything else will fall into place.
Oh man, it's good. That's good. I really appreciate that. Sorry about that, man. But hey, if you need to grab him, go ahead and grab him, dude. No worries. It's all good. It's all part of, maybe he wants to come out and he'll want to come and wave and say hi.
Well, he's just playing with toys right now. He's not too happy, but after I get off here, I'll probably read him a book and we'll
sounds good, man.
He'll be good.
Sounds good. All right, my friend. Well, I don't want to take you away from your daddy duties and everything that you got to do. But again, Josh Tovar, also relationships only thing. There you go for billboard. So Matt, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and just really sharing your knowledge, sharing your stories with all our audience members, all our viewers. And, I'll definitely be putting up all the links here where people can contact you. And, again, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Definitely. Hey, Fonz, hold on one quick second because he's reaching. I'll just let you give him a shout out real quick. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah. All right, guys. So as you notice, it's a live show, and this is amazing part. Oh, look at that. Oh, man. There is little man right there. How are you doing? Hi.
Say hey, bud.
Oh, he wants mommy.
Yeah, he's a little mad right now.
Yeah. Hi. No worries, little man.
Real life, folks. Real life. We are live. So
we are live, and that's what it's all about, man. No worries. This is authentic. This is genuine. But again, Matt, thank you so much for being very authentic, very genuine, very open, and for your willingness to help. And again, just continue doing good work, man. You're doing some amazing things that are inspiring educators such as myself and other educators in our education circle, in our education space. So I really appreciate you for what you do, man.
Gotcha, man. I appreciate it. Thank you again for having me. Anybody wants to reach out to me, best way to get at me is my website, www.leadingoutthewoods.com, or you can hit my email up, leadingoutthewoods@gmail.com. Always love to
Perfect.
connect and collaborate.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you, Matt. Appreciate every single one of you that are going to be watching this later on or listening to this later on. You can always go to myedtech.life. You will find the episode up in about 30 minutes or so, and you'll be ready to go. And again, thank you for everything that you've done and showing our show some support. As you know, this is our passion to just bring amazing educators to you, hear their stories, get inspired by them, and then just take what you can learn and add it to your practice, and that as a little bit of seasoning to what you already do great. So thank you all. We'll see you guys next time, and don't forget, stay techie, my friends.